Recently I went searching for songs by the late Luke Kelly that I may not have heard, and one of them was the American song Joe Hill. As I listened, the line from San Diego up to Maine suddenly leapt out at me. I assumed that he had put that line in because he was performing in San Diego and wanted to give something of a local feel. The reason that I thought he'd done that was that some 40 years ago I had first heard the song on recordings made by Joan Baez when she performed at Woodstock. So after I'd heard his version, I went back and researched her version, but no, sure enough, From San Diego Up to Maine is contained in the original, which made me wonder why I hadn't remembered it, my only logic being that when I first heard the song I had never heard of San Diego and it didn't really stick in my mind. That led to a few other thoughts concerning relevance, because all the time we are being inundated with material. Advertisers want us to see their billboards, hear their commercials, etc., etc. But to protect our brains from overload, we tend to blank out a lot of information. Crime scene investigators, of course, will interview all possible witnesses and will receive multiple accounts of what was happening at the scene, who was there, etc., etc. That's usually given an account depending on the relevance each part of the scene had to the different witnesses. The car lovers will notice the cars, the dog lovers will notice the dogs, men will probably notice women that they perceive as to be more attractive to them, etc., etc. But that's also only natural, again, because we may see a lot of things, but we don't remember everything. Again, basically as a protective measure against overload. I was also reminded of a cartoon strip that I once saw. Starts off with the man, presumably the husband, being engrossed in the newspaper and being told by his wife that he doesn't pay any attention to her. He continues on with his newspaper, cuts out a bit from the picture, and she's standing there naked, and so she asks him what dress she's wearing. He still doesn't look up from his newspaper and responds, "Of course I pay attention to what you wear, dear. You're wearing the red dress." Well, that's just a way to transition over to the thought that there are times in our lives that we should pay more attention to the details around us. But as I started off saying, it's just a natural part of human nature that we don't pay attention to everything. A long time ago I worked for a fast food company that had been sold meat or meat patties that had been tainted with the E. coli virus. This of course was disastrous for sales, measures were taken to improve safety, but also to attract customers back to the restaurants. One of the moves was to paint the red brick building in which I worked white. It was just amazing how many people came in and assumed that it was a totally new restaurant, even though they'd probably driven past it many times in the at least 5 years that had been in existence at the time. But again, because there's so many things to see on the road, people don't always pay attention. And more recently, the store in which I work underwent a rather extensive exterior paint job with similar results. People drive down the street every day. They don't look at all the details simply because they don't have to. They either have other things on their mind, especially of course if they're driving, they're paying attention to the traffic. But suddenly the thing that is different stands out. This basically is the gist of this video, of paying attention to details, but also thinking of why we remember things based on relevance. And relevance is the basic key to the issue, because if something doesn't mean anything to us, we are less likely to remember it. It's just basically human nature, but also something for you to ponder concerning relevance. I'd suggest, for instance, getting hold of a movie that you saw a long time ago, that you remember the basic storyline, I'm sure, perhaps certain scenes from the movie, but then review it in its entirety. You'll probably get a new appreciation of the movie because of this, because different things have happened to you in your life. The movie may be more relevant today, or it may be less relevant, but it's interesting just to have the two thoughts in mind: what you thought when you first saw it, and how you feel about it today. The same can be said of literature, or even if you manage to dig up an old clip of TV show or even news items. We've all undergone different experiences in our life, brings different issues to the fore, and the relevance of everything is constantly changing, and it's always worthy of review, just so that we can learn and review the past in the light of the present. But as we go on with the present, of course even the present becomes its own past, and we never remember everything, but we can always see things differently and with a new appreciation. That might be what you call my little homework section from the video. I'd be interested to hear comments on what you think about these various issues after you've reviewed them. See if there's anything happened in your life that you now look at differently when it's undergone review. But as you go through the week, hope you have a great one, full of great events and great thinking.